Ivory Coast, there's been a major development in the violent fight for the nation's presidency. Toussaint Alain, an advisor to Laurent Gbagbo in France, has told Voice of America that French special forces have arrested incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo at his Abidjan residence. France's ambassador to Ivory Coast is also saying that Mr. Gbagbo has been detained.
Ivory Coast has been the scene of fierce fighting as forces loyal to incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo battled with troops loyal to President-elect Alassane Ouattara. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says civilians have bared the brunt of the violence. Human Rights Watch says pro-Ouattara forces have killed hundreds of civilians and raped Gbagbo supporters. The group has also accused Gbagbo troops of killing civilians. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says civilians have bared the brunt of the violence, reiterating that Gbagbo must resign immediately. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch says pro-Ouattara forces have killed hundreds of civilians and raped Gbagbo supporters. The group has also accused Gbagbo troops of killing civilians.
Now we're joined by our VOA correspondent Scott Stearns, who is in Abidjan as we speak. And wow, what a scene it must be, Scott Stearns, there in Abidjan. Bring us up to speed. What is happening?
Mr. Gbagbo was captured at an underground complex in the presidential compound in Cocody after UN and French attack helicopters bombed the compound again here on Monday morning after 3 waves of assaults on Sunday partially destroyed the compound. After this morning's wave of attacks, where black smoke could be seen over the Abidjan skyline, French special forces and troops backing Mr. Ouattara advanced on the compound in tanks to capture Mr. Gbagbo, who his spokesman Ahwa Donmello says surrendered without a fight.
Scott, this has been a long and bloody battle to come to this point. What do we know about what is going to happen thereafter? There are some reports that Mr. Gbagbo is with the Ouattara forces at the Gulf Hotel, where Mr. Ouattara has been working from all these months. Can you shed any light on this?
We do understand that Mr. Gbagbo is in the custody of the Ouattara forces. It would make sense that they would take him to the Gulf Hotel, not only because that's their headquarters, but it's protected by 3 United Nations peacekeepers. There are still, by the UN estimate, at least 1,000 Gbagbo troops still here in Abidjan. So, having captured Mr. Gbagbo, I would imagine that both the French and the Ouattara forces want to make sure that they are guarding against any attempt to retake Mr. Gbagbo by forces who are still loyal to him. Yes, as you say, it's been a very long battle for control of Abidjan, especially given the speed with which Mr. Ouattara's fighters moved across the country, capturing Yamoussoukro, the political capital, without much of a fight, and San Pedro. They rolled up to the outskirts of Abidjan now almost 10 days ago, and more or less ground to a halt. They were able to take some neighborhoods here in Abidjan. There was heavy fighting around the presidential palace in downtown Plateau and at the presidential compound in Cocody. The UN believed that in the last few days, momentum had shifted to the Gbagbo forces, that Gbagbo forces were recapturing parts of Cocody and parts of Plateau.
Wow. Well,
when UN Secretary General...
Scott, I'm sorry to interject. We're going to have to stop it right now, at least for today. But of course, we'll be getting back to you and hopefully with more updates following what happened today. That's Scott Stearns reporting from Ivory Coast.